So as usual, we will focus in on the Parsha of the week and also other aspects. Ultimately, we'll focus on ourselves as the most important thing. To get some kind of insight as to who we are and what we are about and what we can do. Right. The Pasha Bamidbar, which you all started, I'm sure, speaks about counting the Eid. This is almost the entire Pasha talking about counting, different counts, the Jewish people, the Shvotim, and then the four different flags, four different groups, which you will still learn, and the Levim, and so forth. The whole thing is about counting. The other points out in the Sikha that the Chachamim have required that the Pasha that we read every week another Pasha, you know that, and we should set it up in a way that Bamidbar will always be read before Shavuos. I'm sure you noticed that in Chumash Vayikra we had several times where we joined two pashas doubled up. And the reason they're doubled up is in order to make it possible that Bamidbar should be read before Shavuos. Otherwise we'll go right across.
What about last year when every single parsha was separate? Last year every single parsha was separate, so how would it, if it's you said double it up before?
It depends. When you have two others, so you have enough weeks.
Okay, last year was two others.
Yeah. Depends. We do what we need to do to make Bamidbar Shavuos. It's not always necessary. What?
Last year was two others.
Two others. We have two others. You don't need to double up. Sometimes even Nosei is before Shavuos. Bamidbar, however, is always before Shavuos. Which should tell us that there has to be some kind of a relationship between Bamidbar and Shavuos. Although, to be sure, that the simple reason, so to speak, the presented reason why we made Bamidbar for Shavuos is that we want to have an intervening week between the Toichacha, the end of Vayikra, the most partial that learned last week, the end of last week is the Toichacha. Everybody knows what the Toichacha is.
Telling off.
Curses.
Right. So we don't want the Toichacha to be immediately before Shavuos. We want to have a week intervening between them. So that's why we have Bamidbar before Shavuos. But this is the practical reason. But like everything in Torah, it has the practical reason, and it has also what we call a dynamic reason. There has to be some kind of a relationship between Bamidbar and Shavuos, and that's why they say Bamidbar is before Shavuos. And Bamidbar, we said, is all about counting even. Now, the union of counting is such a level of reference where you do not distinguish between one or another, where everyone is equal. As Moshe Rabbeinu is counted as one, and Dosan Va'avirim are counted as one. even though there's such a huge gap between them. Makes no difference, whoever you are, as great as you are and as small as you are, you have a counterpart. This element of counting, that everyone has a position of one, can be viewed in two ways, from two different angles. On the one hand, you say, okay, he's very small, but still he's a human being. And therefore, what you do in order to be able to count everyone equally as one, in effect, you reduce everyone to what's called a common denominator. What is common amongst them all? They're all just plain human beings. And you count them from that perspective. So this would tend to point up and to relate to a person in terms of counting at the lowest level. At the minimum, he's a human being. And that's what you count. However, there is a halacha. You know the din of beetle, that there is kosher food mixed with non-kosher food, let's say. If the majority is kosher, then the whole mix is kosher. And this small quantity, the minority, is bottled in the majority. It's called beetle. There's beetle baroiv, there's beetle b'shishim. Baroiv means a majority, and b'shishim means 60 times as much. Depends on what kind of mix it is. So, generally speaking, something that is impure, kosher, can become bottled if it is mixed with a greater number of kosher. However, there are certain exceptions to that. One of them is, it's called dover shebeminyan. Dover shebeminyan is an object that is counted. What does that mean? Say, for instance, grapes. When you go buy grapes, you don't buy an individual grape. You don't buy a number of grapes. Give me 10 grapes. That's not the way grapes are sold, right? Grapes are sold by the pound, by the package. But if you go and you buy a lemon, a melon, a watermelon, you don't buy a pound of watermelon. You buy a watermelon. You buy and it's counted, 1, 2, 3. And there are other things that are sold by count. So the din is that anything that is sold by number has that very special worth and respect that does not become both. It's called dover shebeminyan einei both. Because since it is counted on an individual level, it shows that its presence is very recognizable. It has a cheshivus, it's called. It has a worth. It has a respectful place, and that does not become both. So what does this tell us about minyan? Just the opposite. That if you count, that shows that this is something of a higher quality, not a lower quality. What count represents and brings out the higher quality, that it cannot become both. So coming from this perspective, it would tell us that when we say that Eden are counted, and they're all counted equally as one, that means that there is a certain element in all the Eden, in every Yid, on the upper level, on the higher level, where all Eden are equal, and they're all counted as one. This is referred to as what's called the nefesh and neshama, or the etzem hanefesh, the essence the essence of the neshama. Briefly to discuss this is clearly a very involved and deep Indian Chidus, but I just briefly want to discuss the essence of this. What do you mean by essence? Since we are coming to Shavuos and we are preparing for Shavuos, essence of the neshama means the way Hashem looks at the neshama. This is the essence. I want to give you a very simple illustration of the concept. This is a watch. To the merchant who sells the watch, it's money. To the mechanic who put it together, it's a piece of, it's a mechanism. And he's trying to improve the mechanism. What is the real value of this watch? What was it built for? To make money with it? Was it built to show what kind of mechanism we can put together? It was built for the person who puts it on his wrist and uses it. Even though he doesn't know anything about its mechanism and how difficult or easy it is to put together. But that is its essence. In other words, its essence is not what it's made of and what it's constructed and what its structure is, but what is its true value. Who gives it its true value? The true value comes from outside. Because a human being has the principle that he has to measure time, he has to know what time it is. Why does he have to know what time it is? Not because he needs to know what time it is, because he's a human being and he has various responsibilities. He has to say Klishma on time, he has to have Ma'ariv on time, he has to there are things that he has to do on a much higher level than the watch. And from that element, the watch derives its value. The watch derives its value not from its mechanism, but from the human being, who is way, way above in a different category than the watch. To him, it really makes a difference. This is the principle of an essence. An essence means something that has true value, and the true value is from a conceptual and from a higher level. The true value of a neshama, every person has a neshama, Baruch Hashem, and we perceive a human being on the basis of his faculties, basis of his functional capabilities. How smart is he? How capable is he? Does he have talent? Does he play baseball well? I mean, these are all things that we measure a human being by. This is not how Hashem conceptualized a human being. Hashem didn't create a human being because he visualized the pleasure he would have from seeing him playing baseball. That is not what a human being is about. The way Hashem conceptualizes a human being, that's the essence. That's the real person. That's the real neshama. This neshama at that point, at the point of Hashem conceptualizes it, yes indeed, every neshama, no matter how great or small, every neshama there represents Hashem's will. And it is pure and godly. And there's each neshama deserves a place, and it can be counted as one, equally. There's not one that's more important than another. Just to illustrate this point, it says that at the time of Matan Torah, of conceiving the Torah, there were 600,000, as we see from the count, there were 600,000, 3,550, or something like that. And it says that this number was an absolute necessity. If there was one person missing, Torah couldn't be given. We cannot really possibly understand the real significance and the real insight of spiritual insight. But this is what it says. If one would be missing, we wouldn't have seen the Torah. We're not talking about that Moshe Rabbeinu is missing, or Aaron is missing, or the heads of tribes of some. We're talking about any simpleton that was there. If you were missing, there would be no Torah. To constitute a complete body of the Jewish people, it was necessary, and that's why the Torah was given, not to an individual. The Torah was given to the entire Jewish people, not to an individual. And to constitute this entire Jewish body, it was necessary to have all 600,000 plus individuals, neshamas. From that perspective, in fact, every individual is of equal worth, and he has a count of one. So this gives us a little bit of an insight that Chumash Bamidbar comes before Shavuos, because Shavuos is the time of Matan Torah, and in order to give and the giving of the Torah was to the Yidden, to the total congregation, and to all Yidden at the level of the essence of the neshama. And this is what the count is. The count is what brought out and emphasized and expressed what a Yiddish neshama is. That's what they were counted, to show that they're all equal. They can be all counted as one. Then there is another counting that we do in preparation to Matan Torah. Which is the other counting? This we do now, counting of Sphira. You know that between Pesach and Shavuos we count the Sphira, and the counting of Sphira is also in preparation for Matan Torah. As it's brought down that the Yidden, the whole counting of Sphira started right in the beginning, in the first year that Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, because they were told that ultimately they are going to receive the Torah at a certain time, and they started a countdown. They were so anxious for the moment of receiving the Torah, they started counting the days. And this is the original counting of Sphira. This counting of Sphira and the count that Eden did right in the beginning, the very first year. Yes, indeed, this represents, so to speak, the enthusiasm and the anxiousness and which they were anticipating the receiving of the Torah. But then also it has a broader significance. Why was there this gap of time? Even came out of Mitzrayim, between came out of Mitzrayim to Matan Torah, there was like 50 days, a month and a half plus. The simple reason is because when Yidden came out of Mitzrayim, they were really not ready for Matan Torah. Even though they came out of Mitzrayim, they threw off the bondage of Mitzrayim, the impurities of Mitzrayim, they were drawn out of there. But as we know, Hashem drew them out. They were not really internally, inside, prepared for it. To receive the Torah, you have to receive the Torah Pnimius, on a personal basis. Not just to have it, but to absorb it and to accept it. In order to be at that stage, at that level, that they would be able to receive the Torah and truly accept it. As we know that before they received the Torah, there were many things that Moshe Rabbeinu did with them to prepare them, to get them a sense of what is happening, until they were so elevated and so purified that they recognized the principle of Nasa v'Nishma. Sure, you heard this term many times, and we also talked about it from various angles. And Nasa v'Nishma is that Hashem said that this is a secret that, how did we even find out about this principle of Nasa v'Nishma? This is something which is only the Malachim know about. How did we even find out about it? Throughout this process of counting the days, and as we know also that each day corresponds to another sphere. Like we say every day, right? Now, today it's Malchus should be Yisoid, tonight is going to be Chesed Shel Malchus, and then all this the full conjugation of all the spheres 7 times 7. These spheres also represent the midas of a person. What are the midas of a person? The attributes. The midas of a person, this is the means and the experience with which a person relates to his life and to the world. This, in fact, defines the person in his practical day-to-day life. And we know that in the practical day-to-day life, a person may know right from wrong, and yet he is still drawn to do the wrong. It doesn't make any sense, but nevertheless, that's what happens. And in order to receive the Torah and to be guaranteed that I'm going to follow the Torah, you have to make an attempt to, so to speak, to identify the various qualities that the person has, the various tendencies, and recognize, okay, each one of these has the right and the wrong. And we have to choose the right from the wrong. I'll give you an example. The first sphere is Chesed Shebechesed. Chesed Shebechesed. So Chesed means kindness. Chesed Shebechesed means the pure kindness without any admixture of anything else. Kindness for the sake of kindness. So one would think, if it's kindness for the sake of kindness, what can be wrong with it? Why do you need to be Mavarir? This is pure goodness. Yet, we are told that there is Chesed D'Kedusha and Chesed D'Klipa. Avraham Avinu was Midas HaChesed. And he had a son, Yishmael, who was also Midas HaChesed. And there was a huge, huge difference between the gap between Avraham and Yishmael. Avraham was Midas HaChesed Yekdusha, and Yishmael was Chesed Klip. The Chesed that draws you to impurity. Avraham's Chesed drew to Avodas Hashem. What did Avraham's Chesed bring people to do? Avraham's Chesed brought people to recognize the Creator of the world. What did Yishmael's Chesed draw people to do? To recognize what a nice person he is.
Ishmael or God?
Yishmael. Right?
To recognize that Ishmael was a nice guy.
Yeah. I'm just an example. And the tendency that results from that is very, very different. The direction it throws a person is very different. So that the midas of a person, the clear identification of a midah, purifying it and recognizing the good from the bad and drawing the good out and throwing the bad out is a whole process. And the counting of the spheres, the counting of the 49 days, even though we just counted just 1, 2, 3, and we count the weeks, we count we mentioned the spheres and so forth. So even though we just merely counting, so surely we should also be aware of what we're doing and so forth. But even just plain counting, the very fact that a person is aware that there are different midas, and you have to identify them. You don't just follow a plain natural inclination. I like this. I don't care what it's called. There are spheres, and each one has a name, has an identity, and you have to identify what it consists in. Ultimately, to understand right from wrong in every one of the spheres. The fact that a person counts and identifies the various attributes that he has, that already purifies him. Instead of letting him run wild like an animal. The way I instinctively, whatever I like, that's what I do. The very fact that there's a count of what type of attributes he has is already putting a person in a category by himself.
Rabbi, by counting it changes him?
By counting it makes him aware. It doesn't change him automatically. It makes him aware. And then he knows there are things to be done. It's not something that it just goes automatically, like by instinct, like we said all the time. An animal acts by instinct.
It only categorizes him?
Excuse me?
It only categorizes him? He knows where he's at, what he's doing?
Not even. That also you need to work and all that. But at least he knows that there is what to work for. And that you're supposed to give yourself what's called a cheshbon. You're supposed to keep track of what you're doing or what things are. This is the process. The Torah gives us, so to speak, the basics, the minimum, and we are supposed to utilize it and understand and delve into it like every mitzvah. The Torah gives us a plain mitzvah, put on tefillin. Does that mean that there is nothing more to do than to put on tefillin? You have to learn what kavonas you have, what tefillin stands for, and when you have the tefillin on you, you have to stay clean. You mustn't. There are certain things that you have to learn about tefillin. You shouldn't talk outside of plain talk in the tefillin and all that. You have to keep in the holy. There are certain things but nevertheless, just putting on tefillin, you the mitzvah. That's what the Torah gives for everyone. But it doesn't mean that this is where you have to leave it off. You still have to learn more and more and more. So the same thing in this mitzvah of Sfira. This counting, in other words, the counting of Sfira, is the means by which every individual person is preparing himself for Matan Torah. which is also in the form of count, I would say, just like counting by Eden. This is also in the form of counting, which seems to be saying that we're talking about an essential thing, an essence. But this is the essence, the way it is from bottom up. What are the essential attributes? What are the essential qualities in a human being? And by identifying the essential qualities in a human being, that prepares one to know himself and to be able to receive it. So this is what we have here in preparation of Matan Torah. Preparation from two sides, from the top and from the bottom. Top down, this is recognizing the significance of the neshama, the essence of the neshama, as we discussed. This is the counting of the Eden. Then bottom up, recognizing the faculties and the qualities of a person's midas, of a person's functioning purpose. And together, from both angles, I don't understand. I feel sometimes I'm in a kindergarten over here. So, from both sides, this is what's called milamato lamaylo, down or from bottom up, and milamailo lamato, from top down. From both directions, there is that preparation for Matan Torah. This brings us to a clear understanding of the inner of Matan Torah. Because by Matan Torah it says that what actually happened in Matan Torah was a phenomenal inner. As we discussed in previous times, you know that Eden really had mitzvahs before, had Torah before. Avraham Avinu learned Torah, Yitzchak learned Torah, the yeshivas, Yaakov learned Torah, and Shevet Levi learned Torah even during the entire 200 years in Mitzrayim. Shevet Levi never lost it. Shevet Levi was never subjugated in the labor of Mitzrayim, because they were sitting and learning, and they were exempt. They never participated in this labor. So there was Torah all the time. Not only was there Torah, but we also know as that it says that Avram, Kiyim Kol HaTorah Kol Avram, kept. He did all the mitzvahs. He knew all the mitzvahs from learning and from his own seichel. He knew the mitzvahs. Yitzchak did the mitzvahs. Yaakov, the Shvatim did the mitzvahs before he was given. So what was the special thing about the Torah? It was there already. And the explanation to this, which is very important for us to understand, the explanation of the difference between what happened before and after. The Gemara says on the pasuk, based on the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, the Gemara says that the difference between the mitzvahs that we do and the mitzvahs that they always did, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, you would think, well, they're the giants, they're the basis of the whole world. And yet, their mitzvahs in comparison to ours is like this, the pleasant smell of oil and the actual oil. The smell lasts for a moment and then vanishes, dissipates. But if you have the real thing, it's a real thing. We have the real thing, the Gemara says. And the others only had the reiches, they had the reyach, they had the pleasant odor of the mitzvahs. Why is that? Why is that only an order and this and ours is the real thing? And the explanation is, when Hashem created the world, He created the lower world and the upper world. The Gashmizik world and the Ruchnizik world. And the Gashmizik world and the Ruchnizik world were not meeting. They were separated categorically. Within the Gashmizik world, you can only surmise, you can only know what's going over there, but not have it here. They can't have it here. Here we have only the Gashmizik world. So you can, so to speak, emulate a mitzvah. You know what emulate means? Make believe, do something similar, but not have the essence. Because this was a decree from Matan Torah that it was categorically separated. Matan Torah affected a breakthrough of this demarcation line. If you don't understand some word that I say, please stop me. Demarcation line means a boundary, a border. Huh?
What's the word about? Sorry.
Demarcation. You don't have to learn the word, just know what I'm saying.
What does it mean?
It means the separation. A line that separates. There was no more separation. Which means that when Torah was given, Min HaShamayim from Hashem, and given to us, so now when we do a mitzvah, it's not that we're doing a mitzvah on the worldly level. We understand that this is the right thing to do. No. We're doing the mitzvah because Hashem here came down and He told us, here in this world, do this. So we have Hashem's presence here in this world. We once discussed it and explained that the union from Torah permeates, it's changed the world to such a degree that I'll give you a very simple example. The Gemara says, Priyas Baal Choiv Mitzvah, that if you borrow money, it stands to reason if you borrow money, you have to return the money. Right? After all, you borrowed, you promised that you borrowed for a period of time, and then now you're obligated to pay. So this seems to be a simple man-to-man type of a deal, of an obligation. You're obligated to pay the money because you promised that this person has to pay the money. It's a human interaction. So the Gemara says, wait a second, that's not the end of the story. Yes, Baal Chayv mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to pay a debt. Surely you have a human obligation to pay. But there is something much greater involved. You have a godly obligation to pay. It's a mitzvah to pay. Even to that extent, even something at that simple, mundane level, everything in the Torah is of a godly quality. This means that the Torah, as we said, the Torah broke this boundary and brought the highest elements of Abba, the highest world, brought Hashem down onto this world. It made the joining between this world and the higher world. So that here now, when we do a mitzvah now, the mitzvah has an effect throughout the entire world, the entire creation. Not only that, but when Avram Yitzchak did a mitzvah, say with an object, they use an object to do a mitzvah. So the mitzvah was a good deed, but the object with which the mitzvah was done did not become holy, because the physical world couldn't be affected by human action. The physical world was created by God, and it was made to be whatever it was, and the human being with his action cannot change it, cannot affect it. Whereas now after Matan Torah, when we do a mitzvah with an object, the object becomes holy. As for example, tefillin. Tefillin is a holy object. It's not just we do a mitzvah. It's a holy object because we do a mitzvah. A Sefer Torah is holy. The very parts of itself are holy. And Sefer Torah, in the Sefer Torah there is the written, yourself out there, right? There's the written part, the real, the page that's written, and then there is the area, the blank area around it, the white area around it. The Gillion, it's called the Gillion, is also holy. The same holiness. This ability, this power that we have to affect the very physical world itself, this is what was accomplished and was given to us in Matan Torah. Because Hashem himself came down into this world, and Hashem's presence is currently in the world. But now we do a mitzvah, we're not doing a good deed. We are actually partners with Hashem. We are Hashem's hands and feet in doing this mitzvah. This is the extent to which a Yid becomes united with Hashem and does a mitzvah. It says that mitzvah lamed, a person is doing a mitzvah, it's obligatory to stand up while he's doing the mitzvah. Because Hashem is present at the time when he's doing the mitzvah. This is the power of mitzvah. This is what happens at Matan Torah. So Matan Torah, in other words, was a joining of the highest and the lowest. And thus we understand how the preparation for Matan Torah also involved recognizing and bringing out and revealing the highest, the essence of the neshama. And this is what came from above. And the lowest, the purification of one's own midas, the purification of one's own attributes, the human preparation. Together, this enabled the giving of Matan Torah. So this is the basic union of this week's Pasha. Coming, as I said, that we're focused on the Pasha of the week, and we focus on the week, and focus on the period, but primarily we're focused on, you missed that, on ourselves. This was said before you came in. Primarily we're focused on ourselves.
What does that mean?
It means that whatever a person learns in Torah, he must draw from it and recognize, how is this define me? Where do I find myself in it? And what does it mean to me? Can I relate to this? Is this something that I can relate to? Is this something that means anything to me? Is this something, an academic piece of information? Or is it something real? Like, can I be joking around while this is being discussed, or is this something meaningful? I better listen.
What if you can't?
But if you
Can't find it.
If you can't find it, then you look for it and you ask somebody to help you. But everything, in every aspect of Torah there is, particularly, this is our focus here. The point of our discussion is not just to make a nice talk and give you a brochure, but the point of this talk is that we should learn how to understand the meaning of Torah on a personal basis. And to understand that everything in Torah has a personal message. It's real. It's not just nice words, not just highfalutin ideas. You know why it's real? Because each one of us is real. And it is imperative. Imperative means it's very important that we know that. That we know that each one of us is counted as one. And that we explained this counting as one means that this is referring to the neshama as Hashem perceives it. Hashem sees it. The neshama from Hashem's perspective. Each one of us has that neshama, has that koyach, has been granted this blessing. And if we choose properly to focus in on it and to utilize it, literally there is no limit what we can reach, what we can understand, what we can get to. In simple terms, we can become real human beings. For real. Human beings means that we know what we are doing, we stand firmly on 2 feet, and we know our path in life. We know what we're about. We're not groping in the dark. And we understand the significance and importance of life and the importance of each one of our deeds. And we understand the significance and importance of every moment and all the time that we have to utilize in learning and davening. So the focus on us in this instance comes from both angles. It is important for each one of us to reflect and understand. Sometimes the Yetzer Hara comes to a person from every angle, of wherever he finds vulnerability, he'll come to. You know what vulnerability means? Any place where he can attack him, he can find a weak spot. He comes to a person and says, don't be a Balgaiva. You are nothing. It sounds good, right? Don't be a Balgaiva. Right? That is when he finds his vulnerable spot. Because to belittle and to minimize the significance of one's life and significance of one's deed, the significance of a day, significance of an hour, is a plot of the Yetzer Hara. And a Yid, we having learned and understood this union, have to understand that, and of course, I'm not giving you mussar of any kind. In other words, everything has to be done the right way. It doesn't mean that you can't take a rest when you have to take a rest. But I'm saying responsibly. We're all adults. We all understand the importance of growth, the importance of ultimately standing up on our feet. You have to know that no way is it justifiable to minimize the importance of every moment. It's the neshama, it's the etzem neshama that's there. It's a godly creation, and the possibility of achievement is limitless. This is on the one hand. On the other hand, one has to also know how to examine himself. And not be fooled. Oh look, I'm taking out of Mitzrayim, I'm being led through the desert, look at all the clouds, look at the fire, oh wow, I'm really a celebrity right here. and Hashem is coming down, giving me a Torah, I don't need to do anything. That is another ploy, another a vulnerable spot. This is a partnership. Hashem gave the Torah to us in a partnership type of a deal. Like you said, Nodaiti or Tzosi, or Nasa V'Nishu. Hashem gives us a Torah, but we have to accept it. We have to prepare for it. And if we do not do that preparation, God forbid, it goes right over our heads. So, the blessing is all there. Both the greatness of our neshamas, the greatness of our intellect, the opportunities that Hashem is giving us are really a blessing, a God-given blessing. The opportunity of Bachim sitting in yeshiva, undisturbed, to sit and learn 24 hours a day. I don't mean literally. You have to hold your health and all that. I'm not giving anybody any direction or any musar. Each one of you is an adult and you can think for yourself. These are all God-given blessings. And it's very easy to forfeit it. But on the other hand, we can't be fools and do such a thing and forfeit such an opportunity. This is the moment of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and between Yetzias Mitzrayim and receiving of the Torah. You are being counted one by one. And you be given the time to examine yourselves, each one in his own way, and to receive the Torah properly, and to learn things seriously and well and thoroughly, as well as thoroughly as you are inclined to do. It's completely up to you. So in conclusion, as we usually do, I'm sure that each one of you, each one of us, everything's healed, will receive the Torah with joy, with an open mind, with an open heart, and will utilize the gift in the proper way.
Amen.
Lesson for sure.
I'm sorry?
Nothing.
A few portions ago, wasn't there a sentence?
Maybe even old machine. Even old machine.